titled "Are Services for People with Disabilities Accessible to People with Disabilities?" Again, my name is Brittany Wilson. I am a local disability justice advocate. I'm very involved and proud to be a board member of the ARC Minnesota on the Governor's Council for Developmental Disabilities. Also, I do some volunteer work with SEIU Union for Home Care Services. I am a Black and brown woman sitting in my electric wheelchair wearing a shirt that says "Ableism is trash." I have got long brown hair and I am sitting at my kitchen hiding from my cat. And as we get started today, we have heard countless stories from people with disabilities about challenging the process of accessing services, about how challenging the process of accessing services can be. Many of us, including myself, have experienced the fact that the process for accessing services with disabilities is in fact not accessible to people with disabilities. And there are many conversations about this subject, and the challenges have been well documented. But there's also a sense that many of the groups focused on this effort haven't been asking the right questions. Today, we'll hear directly from people with disabilities to learn, to elevate our stories, and to better understand the obstacles in the effort to access services and supports. And today, hopefully, we'll also be able to come up with some solutions. And we are focusing on two questions. The first is, what issues have you faced in trying to access services? This could be county services, the SMRT process, SSI, MA and MAEPD, grants, waivers, or other services. Our second question is, what solutions do you propose that would improve the accessibility process? We are dividing the meeting up into two sections. In the first section, we will cover access to services such as grants, waivers, medical assistance, and PCAs. And in the second section, we will cover issues around education. But first, we'd like to provide a couple of housekeeping reminders. Sign language interpreters and CART services are available. Hover over their photos and click the pin to keep their images at the top of your screen. This meeting is being recorded, so please be aware of that. And please keep your microphone off if you're not speaking, as a courtesy to those around you. And this meeting is being led by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. So you may notice a few differences. There may be some differences in pacing, some different communication styles, and some technical aspects of the meeting may look different from what you are used to. And finally, we will have a timekeeper for this meeting in order to make sure we have time to hear all the speakers. It is our hope and intention that we won't have to cut anyone short. And if the timekeeper asks you to wrap up, we ask that you honor that request. All right, so now it is my pleasure to introduce Jillian Nelson, who will be our facilitator for the services section of this conversation. Jillian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jillian Nelson. I'm the Community Resource and Policy Advocate for the Autism Society of Minnesota. I'm a white woman wearing a green top and a black sweater, and I have dark brown hair pulled in a messy bun. I am sitting in front of a gray bookshelf. I use she, her pronouns and identify as a queer autistic adult. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It is wonderful to see such a diverse group, including members of our community, legislators, and state agencies. We're here to gather together to hear from individuals facing unnecessary challenges in accessing disability services. 31 years ago, the Americans with Disability Act was signed into law, guaranteeing accessibility for all Americans living with disabilities. Devastatingly, we know that accessibility is still something that often must be fought for, including in arenas regarding disability services and supports, which by the very nature of its purpose should be one of the most accessible systems in place. Continuing to look the other way while families and individuals face increasing barriers to access services and supports only perpetuates systemic ableism and racism and further strengthens the forced poverty narrative the disability community has faced for decades. Myself, despite working in this field for 14 years, I have faced significant barriers and challenges to getting services and supports without unnecessary trauma and hardship. But this place today is not for my story. Today, I want to bring your focus, your attention, and your heart to the voices of our community. Please know, though, that for every story you are going to hear today, there are 100 more going untold. And now is the time to listen and learn and commit to making changes to improve the lives of people with disabilities. Without further ado or further words, I would like to welcome Olivia to share her story with us.
Hello. My name is Olivia, and I am a Black woman. I'm sitting in a purple bedroom right now with some blue, it looks blue LED lights, and a brown curtain with glasses and my hair pulled into a bun and a pink headband. I am 19 years old and I'm a college student at Minneapolis Community and Technical College, and I live in Northeast Minneapolis. I have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD, which is permanent brain damage injury caused by prenatal alcohol exposure. Just because you cannot see my disability does not mean that I do not need support. There are many other young adults like me with an FASD that are bright and motivated, but need additional support and services to reach our goals. It is hard enough to transition to adulthood without the added worry of losing support services. If I have a permanent disability, so why do I need to reapply for services when I turn 18? Believe me, my FASD did not go away. It would be helpful if there was a smooth pathway from children's services to adult services. The process of starting from scratch is overwhelming and confusing. The response time from county workers can take far too long. Meanwhile, I am slipping through the cracks without any services. Also, young people like me with FASD are often denied services such as waivers because we don't meet eligibility requirements. Either our disability is not recognized or we cannot access services simply because we have an average IQ. These types of eligibility assessments or requirements do not capture our true daily challenges and the level of support we need. It often feels like our disability doesn't fit into the right category. But I assure you, our needs are real. I believe that young adults with an FASD would benefit greatly from services that teach us independent living and job skills, help us stay organized and make safe decisions, provide support, housing, and supportive living services, and transportation services. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Olivia. That was a really thoughtful message, and I think a very important one to hear. I would like to invite Katie Nelson to speak to us now.
Hi, my name is Katie Nelson. I'm 44 years old and disabled. I'm unable to work outside of my home. The biggest barrier I have encountered in getting disability supports is that to prove I am disabled and unable to leave my home, I have to leave my home. I began seeking help because I was struggling to keep up with chores and tasks at home. I had been managing my symptoms with diet and lifestyle accommodations. When I went to the doctor, I was told I would need to get multiple tests, go to therapies, and try medications before I would be designated as disabled. I was given referrals to 3 different specialists. I was only able to follow up with one. When I'm not home, there's nobody doing the tasks I was having difficulty completing, which means it can take a week or more for the household to recover from just one appointment. I need support so I can go get medical care. What is required is that I get medical care so that I can get support. We need to access simple in-home assessments that rely on visual observation in addition to verbal questions. I am the primary caregiver of 5 children, including 2 children who have disability waivers. I would like to also address the reimbursement process for support needs and services. Getting items and services covered requires me to anticipate possible needs and assistance services for an entire year, submit them to a support planner to translate into the plan, and then wait for approval by a county case manager. That process has taken months. 2 weeks ago, we experienced a severe storm that disrupted power services for 4 days. There were purchases and services related to our child's disability that we needed to purchase to help our children through this crisis. In this case, health and safety would have been compromised. But in general, it's very inconvenient to have to submit a new plan each time we discover a new need, product, service, or opportunity that would support our children. I would find it more accessible to submit receipts after payment with the explanation of how it supported my child's needs. Finally, regarding qualifications of disability service providers, experience with crisis situations is as important as a college degree. In May of 2020, my 23-year-old son experienced a mental health crisis and became disabled. Because of the stigma and misinformation surrounding mental health, he did not report to his employer that he was struggling. When he finally admitted to his partner, it was mid-July. She asked for our help and we immediately began to access supports. What my son needed was full-time in-home support to make sure that he ate, showered, took his medication, got outside for exercise, engaged in emotional regulation activities, attended therapy, and most of all, make sure he did not harm himself. There was no clear path to get him the financial and physical supports he needed to rest and heal. It had taken us years to get in-home disability support, so we began that process, but also attempted to get him on unemployment. We found out after his death that he completed every form and uploaded every document and went into the site every week to claim unemployment, but it kept registering ineligible. Reporting that he was disabled made him ineligible for unemployment, but there were no instructions or links about what to do if you're disabled. The systems are complicated and confusing, but the worst part is when county workers seem to view asking for help, people asking for help, as freeloaders, just asking for a handout. The last person who had contact with my son was the county worker responsible for informing him that he was approved for medical assistance and could pursue further treatment. But she didn't do that. She just told him to contact the post office to resolve issues with delivery or they would close his case. A quick search of her name on Facebook showed her disdain for people seeking government assistance. That email conversation took place on September 16th. On September 17th, my son ended his life. Individuals who have successfully navigated government services during a crisis or with a disability need to be valued according to that experience. A college degree does not always mean the skills necessary to help in a crisis.
Thank you for speaking.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Katie. And we are so sorry for the loss of your son. He was a wonderful human being. I would like to ask Jean and Heidi to come forward.
Hi, I'm Jean Bender, and I've been a friend of Heidi Meyer for probably over a decade.
Yep.
And we had a good talk on Monday about how we wanted to use our time best because Heidi could take up the whole 2 hours with some of the experiences that she has had. So we're really going to focus on a couple of things. Heidi's a really complicated person, like we all are, with multiple diagnoses that intersect. And we were talking about how she needs things ABC 1, 2, 3. And I told her that's an excellent way to explain the concept of plain language. A lot of times forms documents, things we need to submit are not in plain language and it's hard for people to understand. So Heidi, can you share an example or tell us what happens when you don't understand communications from your service providers or the Department of Human Services?
Well, I do ask questions. That's one thing I have the smarts of being able to do with the type of disability I have. First, I'm Heidi Meyer, and my last name is spelled Myhre. So it's a unique last name. So I don't want you guys to get lead. Okay, and I am 51 years old, and I was born disabled and adopted at age 0. Born March 11th, and then April 9th came into the Meyer family. And I'm in the gay community. I just see myself as Heidi Meyer. I'm figuring it out because we're now using all these pronouns, and I'm trying to figure out what that all means because I think I'm bisexual, but I don't think I am. I'm just liking both sides of the world, and a lot of people appreciate me for being who I am. And I have multiple disability, like Jean said. And the system had a really hard time understanding how I process certain things, and they didn't want to believe I had a real disability. So when it came time to do paperwork and doing certain things, I've always been one of those people that is very detailed. So if you know me, you're going to know that I talk very detailed, very certain way. I'm very smart in knowing certain things. And the order of the function, I have to remember, like when I leave the house, I have to remember my keys. I have to remember my hearing aid. I have to remember that my fanny pack, because I have a forearm crutch because I have cerebral palsy and wear a brace on my the ankle foot orthotic in my right side that goes into my shoe. So I have to remember all these different things. And also I like wearing a hat, and that's my signature. When I walk out of the house, I have to remember that, and I have to remember my watch. So everything is a step in my life, because sometimes the world isn't set up for people like us where you can just plan out your day and you're off and running. And even when me and Jean were planning out when to come, how to do this, she had to pull back and go, oh yes, the time is, and this is when you're going to, and this is how we're going to do it. So I can follow you and you can follow me. So that's what's going on there. And I'll turn on my thing so you can see me. This is me. And so, and that picture you just saw is my little tag that I wear at the Capitol. And then I organized it to kind of talk about all the different things I've done with Jean and some of the others you've seen in this conference today. But realistically, there are a lot of people who truly do not understand people with multiple disabilities that need certain things in place in order to function. So for me, it's ABC and 1, 2, 3, so I can follow you and you can follow me, and being very detailed. If you know how to work with that, that's great. And also when I get frustrated, it's, sometimes I talk like, oh, she's really angry, she's really mad, but I'm not. It's just how my brain processes. And just so you know, there's been many doctors, many professionals that didn't understand disabilities, and the school system didn't understand my disability. So and human services had a really hard time because I came in mentally ill coming out of high school. I was in the 10th grade actually it was 11th grade when I fell apart, I put myself back into the hospital. And then from there, that started the journey. And my parents had a very hard time understanding because I got parents that care about me, but they don't understand all the ins and outs of why we're talking about this stuff today.
I want to move on to our next thing. And you did end talking about your parents. Just for everybody else's information, Heidi's parents are deceased now. And so it is Heidi who is in charge. She's been receiving services for many years, but sometimes when she and I are talking, Heidi, you talk about the stress that service and system changes create for you and your fear of being homeless if there's a gap in services or something falls apart. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I've had this happen where I now say don't mess with my money and medical assistance and Medicare, because the county financial worker somewhere along the way put something in my file, and then all of a sudden when I started asking, well, I started noticing there were some serious problems, and it used to be called Disability Linkage Line, which is a program in the state of Minnesota where you can call up their number, their 166 number, and then they can help you navigate the services. Now it's called, I think, Disability Health MN, something like that. And I was asking some questions because I had gotten some things in the mail that I truly did not understand how the hell I got there. And then also, this happened 2 different times. So where I almost ended up out in the streets because Human Services and the county screwed it up. And one was I went and picked up some medicine and they said you owe money, and I didn't know how that came about. And the other one was we found out that there was paperwork problem, that when programs change, not everything gets moved over correctly, and that's what started the road of everything getting screwed up, because I was getting a new social worker. And Jean and all of you guys would have been proud of me because I advocated, and they just told me, no, leave it alone. You're just leave it alone. It's not a problem. It really was a problem because everything I touched was getting messed up. So I get very frustrated at the system, and I have to remember to calm down. I can't really take 100% notes, so I have to remember everything. So what I know is the truth, but the other side was having problems seeing it because the system was so messed up that I prefer nobody to ever in my entire life or your life to ever go through it. The most scariest thing you can ever imagine, and it's hard because if it wasn't for, now it's called disability, and it used to be Disability Linkage Line. If it wasn't for them asking me some questions, I called them up and they said something looks funny, and they found out and they kept cleaning up both my problems because they were asking the right questions and they had to go and find out. And it was really Human Services. And just so you know, I was told I could have sued Minnesota Human Services, but I didn't, because my feeling is that if I did win the case, our system is so messed up that I would have to lose services maybe in order to make my point, which makes no sense because I got all that money. And also, would they learn anything from that big mistake? Or would it be a slap on the hand and they just kind of say, whatever? So the system, like the other ladies were saying, it is very complicated. It's not a funny game just to clean it up. And at the time, which is really cool, now disability MN is the elderly and the disabled are separate, which kind of sucks. So I have to go over there to get things cleaned up. And then I got to go back to the other part to clean it up if you have problems in the future, which I wish it never had happened. Because when I had one person focusing on it, when I finally got them to say enough going around in circles, enough, because the system is very broken. They love going back to the financial worker or the social worker. And I have waiver services for my disability. I have CADI waiver, which is home and community-based services, which I get in the community. And I get a person that comes Mondays and Wednesdays from 9 to 11:30 that helps me with my disability. And I work my ass off to get that correct, because it's not just about the hours. It's not just about that day. It's about the services in between. So
Thanks, Katie. I think
Okay.
a good summary is you work your ass off to try to keep your services. So
Yes.
thank you so much. I think we need to allow time for the next speaker, but thanks.
All right.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for sharing your vast knowledge and lifelong of experience of navigating disability services. Our next speaker I would like to welcome is Jonathan Murray.
Welcome. I'd like to talk a little bit about systems for self-direction. I'm a clean-shaven white male with long hair sitting in my bedroom at my desk, backlit by my window. Um, in case you haven't noticed, I'm autistic. I'm interested in everything, including people, dabble in everything. And I need help and supports for me in my life to function so that I have to deal with a lot of these painful disability systems. And I have some strange beliefs. I believe government systems designed to serve and support us should be person-centered, universally accessible, should provide us with a good user experience, be secure, respectful of our privacy, have an open design process so we can all contribute to them. And the next one is the important one. They should not be painful to use for anyone. I find we have a number of barriers to me as an individual and caregivers that come to systems needing for help. There's a real lack of value placed on our time. You and the system, the different systems involved, Ramsey County, MNDHS, they have most of our information in databases already. And they don't value our time enough to build a system where that we can interact with a user interface for a basic universal systems profile. There's a lack of trauma-informed processes, and we're not in charge of our data and cannot share it granularly with different providers. And there's a lack of customizability in systems to tailor them to processes and for people so they fit people. If I need to do something in writing, or if I present best by email or by phone, like it's hard to make like FMS providers or other systems work for you so you can be in charge of your services. So my vision for a lot of our support services would be a universal profile for our services, like MyChart. I know MyChart's pretty clunky if you used it, but I can link my account with other care teams. Like I am in 3 or 4 different service care providers. If you include the different like support services I need, I am managing between 8 different care teams. We should be able to share information between them, connect with service providers, update our own information and see what is in our chart, and take assessments if needed from home or in settings that are comfortable to us where we feel safe. And we should be able to define our teams and circles of trust to ensure that we can trust our care providers with our information. I've had service providers which didn't believe autism was real. So I've had to choose between specialty services and masking or hiding, or not disclosing some of my needs in order to get those specialty services. Another point I'd like to touch on is MN choices, or as I like to call it, tell me about yourself and the worst day of your life in the last year or ever. We have a big problem with our assessment process here in Minnesota. It's not trauma informed. When you are told you need to disclose some of your worst traumas or things you need help with or dysfunctions that are already documented in your case every year to a complete stranger to get the help you need, that's a problem. It's abusive to the individuals being served if that information is available another way. in our courts, we have adopted systems and testimony protocols in order to reduce the trauma upon people who've had traumatic experiences, so we don't make them live through those things again. Why have we not adopted this in our human services field? And thank you for your time.
Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing with us today, especially with some really great insight and ideas on how the system can be bettered.
That was really good. I just wanted to say thank you.
I would like to welcome Kate Barden.
Thank you, Jillian. My name is Kate Barton. I live in Woodbury. I'm an autistic adult. The healthcare system is inadequate to provide inclusive healthcare for persons with intellectual disabilities. I personally experienced this when it comes to my care. There are two areas that need to be addressed to make them more inclusive or accessible for people with intellectual disabilities. If physicians could be educated on how to work with persons with intellectual disabilities while still in med school, maybe we would have physicians that would be more inclined to work with us and not ignore health care problems before they become problems. I struggled with obesity when I was pre-diabetic and was able to lose weight, but it has still been a struggle. Nutritional programs such as Weight Watchers and Nutrisystem are often expensive. They are not suited for persons with intellectual disabilities. My situation is different from other people. I tried to tell Weight Watchers leaders that I had intellectual disabilities, like hearing crickets when I was asking for help. I found that there aren't any programs aimed at persons with intellectual disabilities, which has led me to want to write legislation to make this happen. I took a couple of civic engagement courses through Special Olympics, and one of my assignments was to create a bill. I created one that would address these things. The bill aimed at creating either intellectual inclusive obesity program, a wellness program that through these incentives, program through that has incentives.
I'm sorry, the background noise is getting a little bit too much. It's hard for the interpreters to hear. Could we make sure everyone's muted who needs to be? Thank you.
Built into it to encourage people with intellectual disabilities to live healthier lifestyles. People with intellectual disabilities are 60% more likely to be obese and have undiagnosed illnesses such as diabetes as a result of obesity. I found that people with intellectual disabilities are often excluded from data collection when it comes to health research or conditions. Department of Health is one of those places that does not keep data, which leaves us out and our voice is not heard. If this data was tracked, it could be visualized and seen so it could be addressed. I have the two special needs basic care programs in Minnesota, Medicare and UCare, which has become the way of healthcare for people with intellectual disabilities who are employed, offers a wellness program. UCare is only insurance company that offers a wellness care program. It's special needs basic care program, which I think they all should be required to offer them. This would be a way to create a healthy lifestyle program that would allow the state to save money on costs of obesity-related illnesses. Medicaid only covers obesity care if you're diabetic, which is backwards. It is often the dietitian services that aren't covered. Why should people with intellectual disabilities become diabetic when it can be prevented? Dietitian can be a great resource to help teach people with intellectual disabilities skills on nutrition. As people with intellectual disabilities often struggle with proper nutrition. They're also experiencing mental health issues as well. They're not having anywhere to go because there wasn't anyone that was willing to work with them. So I also want to see some mental health care, the mental health care system become more inclusive as well. As we all know, obesity and mental health go hand in hand. I have talked to my representatives, asked them to sponsor my bill, legislation I wrote. They both agreed to sponsor. As the legislation is a survey that the state to help the state understand why we have such a high level of obesity and what needs to be done to help create programs aimed at us. My House and Senate bill was passed on the this spring onto the health and finance committees for further discussion for the fall. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this and staying involved with the process until it's signed by the governor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Preventative healthcare and nutrition and looking at obesity in our community is such an important topic, and I think the work you're doing towards that is absolutely outstanding. I'd now like to bring forward Trevor Turner. He's going to be sharing a letter for us from community member Judy Moe.
Thank you, Jillian. As she said, my name is Trevor Turner. I am the Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Council on Disability. I'm a white male with blonde hair and wearing a gray polo and clear glasses. My background is a slightly blurred office background with a MCD logo in the corner. I'm going to be reading a letter from Judy Moe. Judy Moe is also a council member for the Minnesota Council on Disability, but she also is a mother of someone with a disability. So I'll go ahead and read the letter now. Hello, my name is Judy Moe, and I am the director of the Richfield Disability Advocacy Partnership. I'm also a proud parent of my 25-year-old daughter, Raven, who has multiple disabilities. I could make a long list about the many barriers keeping people with disabilities from accessing services, but I want to talk about something that I come across most in my work. So much of what I do in my advocacy work ends up being advocating for a disabled adult to their case manager, or calling the county to report a case manager for being absent, not returning calls or emails for months at a time, telling consumers or their parents that they will apply for a service for them, and 6 months later, it turns out they never pursued it at all, discouraging parents from going on to CDCS, consumer-directed community supports, or telling people that they probably won't qualify for something, so there's no use in applying, when in fact they do qualify. Adults with disabilities and children with disabilities and their parents are at the mercy of these case managers. They are the gatekeepers, and they have the ability to help someone live the best life they can, or simply do little to nothing to help them get their basic needs met. Hennepin County has been very responsive with a swift response when I alert them to these situations. But most people getting services do not have an advocate to help them. They are just trapped. You can do min-choice assessments and get people qualified for waivers, consumer support grants, or PCA services as much as you want. But if the case manager they're assigned to refuses to do their job, they are trapped and are no better off than before they had services in the first place. Case managers do not give consumers the phone number to their supervisor or tell them how to call to report abuse. They are often solely dependent on their case managers for everything. As we know, everything is connected, and when someone doesn't get the services they need, it can put their health at risk, cause them to lose their housing, and many other serious things. There are awesome case managers out there, and my family has experienced several great ones. For 25 years, I have felt privileged that we've had so many great case managers, but I realized recently that we are not privileged. The bar is just set so low that having your basic needs met and having a case manager who does their job feels like they're going over and above and beyond, when really everyone deserves to be treated with respect and get the services they qualify for. To DHS, I say, please make changes that allow for more supervision, particularly with agencies that the counties have contracted out their case management to. Things aren't like they used to be when all the social workers in the county were under one roof. If the responsibility falls solely on the county's shoulders, I'm asking DHS to support the counties in creating changes and requiring more supervision of the different agencies and their case managers. People's lives are literally at stake. Thank you for listening. Judy Moe, Richfield Disability Advocacy Partnerships.
Thank you so much for stepping in and sharing that, since Judy could not be with us today. I would like to ask Heidi Storm to come forward and share with us now.
Hi, all. Good morning. My name is Heidi Storm, and I live in St. Peter, Minnesota. That's in Nicollet County. A little description for you all. I'm a fat white person with short curly blue hair, wearing a black shirt, a crystal necklace, and a blue pin saying DID and OSDD Pride, representing my place in the plural community. I'm sitting in front of a patchwork quilt hanging on my wall. I am a late diagnosed autistic adult with ADHD and complex mental health diagnoses. I am about 18 months into attempting to get a CADI waiver or PCA services. I have been repeatedly neglected and disappointed by mental health practitioners who expect me to function like a non-autistic adult in order to prove I can participate in trauma treatment. For me, getting diagnosed with autism and ADHD at age 34 felt like a huge turning point and gave me hope that I could access better supports to live the life I want without depending on the relatives who have contributed to my developmental trauma. However, due to that trauma, it was hard for me to reveal my symptoms and struggles enough to prove to an assessor and my social worker that I needed different support services beyond mental health treatment. In stressful situations, I fall into people-pleasing behaviors, which we also know to be the fawn response, and lose my ability to advocate for my true needs. In fact, I can lose the ability to speak up for myself at all when put on the spot about what kind of help I need. And the burden of proving that I am bad off enough to deserve disability supports completely undoes the work that I've done around self-compassion and acceptance in therapy, where I've learned not to compare my trauma to others. The state of Minnesota and Nicollet County have spent significant time and taxpayer money denying me appropriate disability support services and hearing and denying my appeal case that would have been better spent on actually supporting my needs as a disabled adult. A menu of services and supports in plain language and a session with a trauma competent person-centered planning specialist would allow me to select the supports I most need without bouncing me to so many different medical practitioners and gatekeepers, all of whom are making money off of limiting what supports I can have. I am so tired of having to fail services to move to a higher level of support. I had a mental breakdown in late May related to an untreated infection and also due to the frustration of needing to survive with so little effective support. I worry that without accessing appropriate self-directed supports, I will suffer from another breakdown and lose the opportunity to live in my apartment and to participate in the community the way that I want to. I communicate best in writing and would benefit most from an online portal similar to what I use with my doctor's office to do updates and questions for my medical care for disability supports as well. I would really love to see more supported decision-making built into the onboarding process for state disability services, because it seems that it's weighted towards non-disabled people, like people who have the executive functioning and the like emotional consistency to go through all of these hoops and do all of these things on behalf of a disabled person. Like many people under 40, I don't have a printer or fax machine. I communicate best online. Having county staff come to my house for an in-person interview without prior access to the exact questions they will ask makes it harder for me to communicate my needs well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Heidi, for sharing some of that struggle with us and also sharing how easily it would be to really serve someone in a capacity that is centered in what works best for that. I would like to bring forward our last speaker, Debbie Towie.
Yeah, this is Julia. Hey, Debbie, I can help you out today. Are you good to go?
Yes.
Okay, so here, let me just give you an introduction. So, hi everyone, my name is Julia Bergstaller. I'm the Public Policy Director for the ARC Minnesota. I'm a white woman with short brown hair and glasses, wearing a green polo and sitting in my living room. Today I have a self-advocate, Debbie, who is involved in the ARC Self-Advocacy Advisory Committee. And Debbie would like to share her story with you today. So Debbie, I know that you would like to speak about employment and work today. So can you please share a little bit with the folks here?
Yeah, I'm Debbie Towie. I'm self-advocacy, and I'm involved in lots of things like hosting happy hours, my services, and I am disability, deaf in my left ear, and I think I want to let you all know that I am been there for several years, and I just what am I supposed to say?
I know, Debbie, that you had talked to me a little bit about wanting to work and feeling frustrated that you haven't been able to. Do you want to share a little bit
Okay,
about that?
so that'd be a good idea. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm self-advocacy. I had worked at Arby's before the COVID pandemic came, and I was devastated because I'm not working right now. I'm not making enough money, and I feel that I'm isolate my job that raising money for people that who need it to help me to get back to my job and stuff like that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing. I know that the pandemic has really caused a lot of issues for people who have disabilities and interrupted their lives and services. And thank you so much for sharing your story today, Debbie. I know that it's really frustrating and you've shared with me before, but we appreciate hearing from you and you being here.
And there's more. I think that many of you will know how much I love being with people. And I just want to share one little particular thing that I have known for several years. And I have to read this because I know it's involved in self-advocacy on topic. But I still want to share this. Debbie is a self-advocacy from Bloomington, Minnesota. She has been self-advocacy for several years and is a part of a self-advocacy group called Self-Advocacy Advisory Community. She also helps host and support our happy hour event. This is an event where the self-advocacy come together to celebrate, game, and have fun every Thursday evening. Debbie's favorite part about being a self-advocate group is meeting and talking to people she shared that she's good at, communicating, advocating for her own needs and desires. In her lifetime, she shared her story with many people and groups, continue to do so when opportunities arise. Outside of being self-advocacy, Debbie participates in Special Olympic sports of golf, soccer, softball, and tennis. She's looking forward to participating in Special Olympics this summer. She also likes to listen to music and watch movies, knit, make artwork. She also spends time with her dog, Trapper, who is a beagle. Thanks, Debbie, for sharing. So that's what I wanted to let you know.
Thanks so much, Debbie. I really appreciate you being here.
Anytime. Thank you very much for having me join this wonderful segment.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Debbie, and for Julia for the help. This is the end of our section on services, but don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about education next. Before we do that, I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you and gratitude and acknowledge some of the listeners that have been here with us today, including Senator Wigger and Senator Wickland, Senator Hoffman, Representative Sansed, Christy Grom from the Department of Human Services, Darren Court from the Department of Education, Robin Wildley from the Department of Education, and Scott Budall from the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. It is now with great joy that I'm going to pass the microphone, per se, off to the Minnesota Autism Council Chair.
We have to thank all the speakers too. This is Heidi, because they did an excellent job and told the stories beautifully, exactly what's really going on. So they get the big clap.
Absolutely. Thank you to all the speakers. Without further ado, I would like to pass this off to the Minnesota Autism Chairperson, Jules Edwards.
Good morning, and thank you all so much for being here today. Heidi, I just want to, yes, thank you to all of the speakers. And I want to start off by saying miigwech. That means thank you in Ojibwe. To everyone who shares their stories today. It is vulnerable and brave. And I just want to say that this event is really filling people's cups. And I love hearing directly from the people who are experiencing these hardships and being able to share with people who can hopefully make a difference in improving our lives. It's a big deal. So I am Jules Edwards. My pronouns are she, her. I am a light-skinned Native American woman with long dark hair. I am sitting in a light gray room, and there are white shelves holding sparkly bottles of beads behind me on the wall. I am the chairperson of the Minnesota Autism Council, a work group of the Minnesota Senate Health and Human Services Finance Reform Committee. That's a lot of words. I also serve as a board member for the ARC Minnesota and Minnesota Disability Support Alternatives, among other volunteer roles in the community. I'm a disabled person, and I am the parent of disabled children who qualify for special education services. This is not uncommon. Special education is a very complicated process for anyone, but it can pose nearly impossible barriers for people with disabilities. Advocacy organizations are helpful, but they're not always equipped to provide disability supports for disabled parents. There's no process or mechanism by which a disabled parent can request reasonable accommodations for their own disability, either from schools or from the Minnesota Department of Education. Today, we'll hear from disabled parents who are having difficulty with accessing a free, appropriate public education for their children. It's a foundation of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The first person that we have here to speak today is Jennifer Bertram. Jennifer, are you ready to speak?
Thank you. Jennifer Bertram. I have a master's degree in social work, and I'm going back to school this fall to pursue a master's in legal studies. And as a parent of 2 children with autism, ADHD, anxiety, and depression, my whole life is focused around supporting their needs, and even made it difficult for me to maintain employment during COVID distance learning with lack of access to special education services. I've been unemployed since February, and I just want to be honest and say I'm angry about the lack of access and the lack of support that's available to my children, and the lack of training, the lack of all kinds of things that that my children need to be able to function in this society that doesn't work very well for people with autism. I've worked with Ed Allies, Ed Voices blog to publish a couple of posts so far about my children. You can read about them in a little more depth than I have time to get into today, but I'll give you just a quick overview. I have 2 children, they're 12 and 14. My 14-year-old regularly says that she is stupid, that she's a failure, that she can't ever do anything in life. That's not coming from me. I strongly feel like the education system has failed my children. Let me tell you a little bit about Zara. She's enrolled in a gifted program in a district that has, you know, a pretty robust gifted education opportunity. She's in the 99th percentile for intelligence. She just took the pre-ACT and nearly got a perfect score. So this kid isn't stupid. She didn't fail. The education system failed her. I open enrolled my children in this district, moving them from our home district after being so frustrated for so many years and not getting access to the services we needed. My older one was finally diagnosed with autism in 3rd grade after I'd been told for years that I was just a really shitty parent, excuse me, and being discounted with all of the things that I tried to bring to our medical providers, our mental health providers, our education providers. And my younger one was just diagnosed 8 months ago with autism after another journey that I'd been through, being discounted and excluded and just, you know, people not recognizing my needs. I regularly say that I have a master's in social work so that people will give me a little bit of credibility. Doesn't usually work, but I try, because parents are regularly discounted with what we bring to people. So my kids have attended school in 2 districts, collectively 5, soon to be 6 different schools as my older one starts high school. And one thing I know for sure, I have extra credit kids who stump even the most experienced and dedicated professionals across the board. Being intellectually gifted with a disability, or what's known as twice exceptional, or 2E, means traditional classrooms, even those that have differentiated instruction and assignments, even a gifted classroom, often miss the mark to keep my children engaged and progressing academically. We've been told over the years that there's the expectation that children achieve a year's worth of learning in a school year, and that consistently does not happen. I think the reason why I moved my kids was after a particularly really difficult year where I was begging. My child got diagnosed with autism. The school said, doesn't matter, she's fine in school. She's not a disruption in the classroom and she's not below grade level. So what do you want special education services for? I'm like, to support her and accommodate her needs in the classroom. They said they don't see any need for that. I've been through a lot of different providers. I have a high bar, high expectations of people, and I regularly am disappointed. My younger one, so both of my kids actually only got approved for IEPs as of 6th grade. So their entire elementary careers, they didn't receive any services or supports or accommodations at school. And they were stressed and they were anxious and they were bullied and they were failing school, and it didn't matter because they were smart and they didn't provide us like a disruption in the classroom. What I've learned is you know, the resource room for special education really just feels like a place to put people when they don't fit in somewhere else. And that services at school really don't meet the needs of children like mine. So I guess, you know, the biggest thing that I would ask is that people be trained to understand the dynamics of especially children like mine who maybe present with a little different level of symptoms as stereotypical autism might look like. People don't understand this condition. They don't understand how the spectrum can present itself and don't understand how to work with people like my children. We need more access to special education services. My children failed distance learning, and I tell them, you didn't fail distance learning, distance learning failed you. The education system failed you. And my daughter has to take geometry this summer to make up some high school credits. And it's a distance learning, online, self-directed class. How is that helpful when she failed it because that was the way that it was taught originally? There's been zero support from the instructor. And I actually am using our family support grant for tutoring to try to help this kid pass geometry independently in the summer so that she can progress in high school. I'm really anxious about moving my kid to a high school that is huge, and I've still not met most of the individuals who are going to work with her, and I really lack confidence that people are going to know how to work with my child, and we don't have time. Her grade point average is going to be her grade point average, and if it's going to be failing, then that's going to reflect in her ability to do anything in the future towards her further education, or it'll be reflected in her self-confidence. So I guess I'll just wrap up saying I think we need training, we need additional resources and supports, we need things that are more customized to children that might present a little differently. Special education needs to be more than just, you know, a room like sectioned off for kids that don't fit into regular classrooms. And we need a recognition of the needs of children that maybe internalize their stress and don't externalize their stress. I'm angry and I'm trying to use it to pursue good, to make changes in the system so that children like mine can do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Jennifer. Next on our agenda, we have Tiffany Tully. Tiffany, are you available?
Yeah, I'm available. Hi. I just wanted to say, Jennifer, your story is so much like mine, including the description of your children, except we're a few years back, and I'm worried that that's where we're headed. So I literally agreed with every single thing that you just said. So thank you for that. My name is Tiffany Tully. I am the secretary of the State Autism Council, and I am a light-skinned person with brown hair pulled back into a ponytail, and I'm wearing a black shirt in front of a window and a wood door in a bedroom, hiding out from my family who have been outside the entire hour and just came in 5 minutes ago. So if they're loud, I'm so sorry. Anyway, I'm gonna read a letter, and I'm positive that there's gonna be like 100 spelling and mistakes, and I'll have to be all over the place, but that's who I am. So here you go. I am an autistic parent to 2 neurodivergent kids. I have other disabilities, including a traumatic brain injury and an autoimmune disease. I am a disability advocate and a caregiver to my children. I have a degree in ABA, which I no longer use nor believe in, and use to fight against it. So I actually use the knowledge to help support reasons not to use it in schools and such. Before I had kids, I was a teacher and have been through the process from both sides, through the IEP process. And I can say with confidence, as someone who has seen it all, that this system is set up, whether intentional or not, to go against any and all disabled families. Putting it out there. I'm here today to talk about our family's experience with the IEP process and the way ableism informs that process. I do want to say that I may mention some triggering topics. So those who are maybe triggered by stuff as in seclusion and stuff may want to just make sure to turn it down if they need be. So The IEP process assumes that parents are in a position to advocate for their children. It assumes that parents have the communication and executive function skills to manage a very complicated process. It assumes that families have the time and the space, not to mention the childcare, to spend long hours in IEP meetings and advocate for their children. Our personal experience with this is that I have 2 children, obviously, who I just talked about, who I've been advocating for 8 years. So we've started trying to get services when they were under 3, and we're just now getting maybe an IEP for my 2nd grader, maybe, when she has very much shown that she's needed help, and the same for my son. So parents of children with disabilities do not have extra time to put in hours and hours of extra work to push against the system that should be working with us. Parents who are managing their own disabilities, in addition to those of their children's, may not have this ability or energy. I've had to hire out help in order to get my documents, paperwork, even writing IEP goals and present levels for the school, all of which should not be my responsibility, but due to my children's specific needs, their inability to document things, and my need for support, I have had no choice, which obviously someone who are, not in the ability to be able to hire other people, I mean, it's very clear that they're screwed. There's nothing, it's horrible. It's just absolutely horrible. A huge issue with this concept of making me do things that most people can't do and aren't qualified for because they don't have the background, is that parents of disabled children statistically are less literate than average due to the prevalence of heritable disabilities. Schools need to be prepared upfront to discuss parents' communication and processing needs, and if needed, deliver and what's needed to be delivered for them. Whereas I need print to do a lot of my work, a lot of people need it over speaking and other ways. Systems which make these assumptions about parents, their abilities, their free time, and their communication skills are ableist in classes. Any system that requires this perfect alignment in order for parents to get services for their child is in fact discriminating against people with disabilities, people with for whom English is not their first language, people who work at jobs where they cannot take time to come off and meet during the day. To do any kind of work for my children, for the IEP process, I need to either have my husband leave work to help with the kids or hire help. In fact, I've been asked to not bring my child to the IEP meetings when I had no other choice. So I had to probably spend a few hours searching for someone who had the abilities and skills to care for my special needs child. I have no family here, and getting help is near impossible due to our family's disabilities and needs. In fact, I've had to fly in my mother-in-law and spend like $700 getting her here to watch my child because there was a meeting and the school couldn't meet any other time. The issue I see happening a lot is that most people on the team recognize that my child is disabled at school, but can't understand that the child is disabled at home too. What makes it worse is the pressure to understand the things being said at the meeting when I have my own processing delays. There have been many times where there was a miscommunication on my part and it cost my kids support. There was no way to convince the school that my disability needed support to be able to get my own children's support. In fact, administration has laughed at me when I expressed my disability was in the way of getting support for my children. There have been many times where I've asked for a document before the meeting and they only provided it sometimes because they were doing a courtesy to me. At points where I wasn't provided the documents beforehand, they then read it out loud during the meeting and expected me to be able to understand their way of communicating. This made the meeting completely inaccessible to me during the meeting and a waste of everyone's time. In fact, one time I had a meeting where they said nothing had even been written in terms of the IEP, so they had nothing to send me. Well, the next day they pulled up the entire written document and tried to show it over Zoom. No one could read it. I couldn't have it read to me because of my processing issues. So we had to spend 20 minutes for them to figure out how to email it to me. I had to get my husband away from caring for our children to go get it from the printer. And then I had to read it in front of everyone so that I could express our opinion. That's not how this should work. Some other upsetting and ableist things have been as followed. And here comes some of the trigger stuff. They called me into a meeting and then didn't let me speak. So I sent a reply in writing with a paid advocate. And of course, that would be incredibly expensive. They did the exact same thing over and over again. And they kept asking for replies and keep saying, and keep not changing it and then asking for reasons. Keep not changing it and asking for reasons. It would look like it was intentionally trying to confuse me. I use an advocate to speak for me at some points when I lose the ability to use my voice. They don't like her and they mute her during our conversations, even though she is my support person for myself. So they just basically took away my voice. The turnaround times have been absolutely horrible. More than once they have asked for replies within a few days. My children many times don't sleep, so I don't get 5 minutes to myself to even go to the bathroom, let alone write a whole document for them. There are other things that aren't just given issues with disabled individuals advocating for the disabled kids. I would like to be able to present myself to be on equal footing with educators, but even things like taking a shower, getting dressed in nice clothes to look polished for a meeting are just not in the cards some days. It is well known that the more put together you look, the more that people listen, unfortunately. Yet I've had to go with unbrushed hair and even coffee stains on me because I just physically can't get everything out the door and get my kids' needs met and then mine and then look presentable. Even with a degree and background, there's zero way that they respect me as much as the next person with makeup and hair and everything done. And I know that based on conversations I've heard in teachers' lounges. So I've told the schools my degrees and my history with work, yet I feel that they only see me as inferior due to my needs and the way that I seem frazzled most of the time due to me managing my own health as well as my kids. And I should reiterate that this is not just a feeling, it is a fact. And one that's been clearly communicated to me. They have expressed to me that they know better than my own self about my own disabilities and my children's. Someone with lived experiences, as well as an educated background on this topic. And that if I didn't like it, I was free to move to another district. Another issue is that I've had teachers respond in cursive font on emails. After I've told them that I can't read it, they've continued to do it the rest of the year. They've told me that they cannot do bathroom support for my child unless if they came to school for a few weeks and documented that he was needing full-time bathroom support, which we all know is not okay. A child shouldn't have to not have, he needs support. And we had to get the state involved in order for them to help us. I can't make this up. They have tried to correct me about what a stim looks like. My child was stimming. I told them that this is their anxious stim. This is what they're doing. They copied and pasted a Wikipedia article and said, this is stimming. And I specifically stated, well, so is this, what I'm doing with my own hands. And they told me that that's not a stim. They have put my child in a closet to use as a quiet, calming space when she asked for a walk with a para. My child is one that's never been in trouble. She's not one, she's very much like Jennifer's child, just very quiet, and she had a rough morning and she asked for some time. And so they said, do you want to go in this closet? She didn't have words to be able to say yes or no. So they put her in the closet, and I watched it happen. I left the school and I came back, and I'm still not okay with it. The closet was a closet with shelves for books and stuff for the teacher, classroom supplies, which made it really unsafe for my child who has other disabilities, making it unsafe. So I'm almost done, I promise. They also left my child in soiled underwear for hours. She ended up getting an infection, which needed. They sent a letter to me that day saying that she wasn't acting typical, but didn't know why. The reason why is because soiled underwear. My child eloped multiple times from school and no one documented it, leaving me still 3 years later with no documentation of elopement. COVID support has been very small. They offer it online, but my child can't, both children cannot access it. I've asked for in-person ESY and they say that my children do not qualify. Yet both children attended maybe 10 lessons for speech the entire year last year. They have lost my child's medical equipment and did not offer it to her because they lost it. They wouldn't let my child have direct access and model her fidgets because they were worried other kids would want them too. They had my child take off her fidget sweatshirt that I gave her so that she'd have access to fidgets. And did not, because my child did not understand how to engage with others about it. Therefore, they didn't support her. They didn't show her how to keep it on her body. And they sexualized her by saying that it's inappropriate for her to ask friends to touch her sweatshirt. So she was not allowed to ever wear sequins again that year. I was punished for communicating with her morning para, even though I was also speaking with her teacher too. It was a drop-off person and I was explaining that she was having a rough morning and apparently I'm not allowed to tell the para that. I was called in to the principal's office and told that that was not allowed, even though I thought that I was doing my child a service and favor and to the para. So none of this is accessible to parents of children with disabilities, let alone parents needing to manage their own disabilities as well. It's like I need this perfect convergence of stars aligning to be in a place where I can advocate for my kid. And even then, it's inaccessible to me. It costs me hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to help and support just to be able to advocate properly. We had MDE come help moderate in a meeting twice now. And I felt that even the attorney moderator had no understanding of how to communicate with an autistic person. The way they spoke to me, expected me to understand them, and even told me again and again that I wasn't making sense, felt incredibly disheartening. It just made me have to dig more and more out of the hole that I felt everyone kept putting me in. Here's my proposed solutions. I swear I'm almost done. I do talk a lot. Districts need to be aware of the fact that many of the parents of children with disabilities may also have disabilities themselves. Schools need to ensure that parents are offered ADA accommodations during IEP meetings. This might include providing documents prior to meetings and making sure that all conversations happen in writing, allowing extra processing time and any other things that the parents need. Schools need to look at the internalized ableism that is built within our system and be ready to do the work of dismantling it, which I personally don't think that we're being listened to. MDE needs to have a process in place where families have recourse if a school is not offering ADA accommodations. The process of filing a complaint is in itself not accessible to a lot of families. MDE needs to look at the number of complaints filed by families and look at how many of those complaints are found in favor of the families. How many of these cases did the families have legal representation? Is our system for filing complaints only accessible to those that have the resources to hire an attorney? I will say among my peers, the answer is yes. Most of them have to have an attorney. If you don't have an attorney, you're done. If you do get an attorney, you most likely will have repercussions for the rest of the child's career in that district. I know. All parents want to be partners in their child's education, but this lack of accessibility and understanding that parents have disabilities too is one of the main things that contributes to an adversarial relationship. I have quite literally begged, I've been in tears, and I've cried in front of them for help. I've said, I just want to be on the same team. I trust you, I like you, let's be on the same team. I've stated how much I want to be a part of the team, and I've been laughed at, and eyes have rolled at me.
Stephanie,
this is not what any of us want. We have to believe that this is not what schools want either. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Longer.
That's all right. We're still on track with our time. I'm going to ask Maren Halden to share a letter that she received from someone related to education. Maren, are you ready?
Thanks, Jules. Hi, everyone. My name is Maren Halden. I am a white woman with blonde hair, and I have semi-clear glasses, not as clear as Trevor's. And I'm sitting in my living room in front of a bookcase, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm ready, but I'm just sitting really hard with what you just shared, Tiffany, because so for a long time, my job has been to be an attorney for families of kids who have disabilities and navigate that complaint process. And I just want to acknowledge how hard it may be for a lot of folks to hear all of the things that Tiffany just shared. But I just also want to say that your family is not alone, and there are hundreds of families who go through that every year. And so I'm just so grateful to you for sharing that here. I have a very brief, I had reached out to a person who I thought would have a really powerful story to share, and she wasn't able to attend, in part because the stress of being a parent who is disabled of a child with a disability during the pandemic has been too much. And she wanted to share about how hard it is for a single parent with a disability to be home with a child with a disability with no support for over a year, and balancing that with layers of other stressors and barriers. Specifically, she battled 2 disability reviews for herself, regular MA EBT review, in addition to an IEP evaluation for her son that was all overdue for a year because of the pandemic. And during this, her son, who has a disability, was suicidal. And so she reached out for help and simply couldn't find it. And she, as she puts in her own words, I'm usually pretty resourceful, and I can attest to that. This is an incredibly resourceful parent. And also then after 13 years of her son qualifying for SSDI, he was deemed ineligible for SSDI after 13 years, and she had no ability to fight that appeal during the crisis. And that was the most she was able to share with me via writing, again, because of the stress of all of this. And so I know that if she had the bandwidth to be here today, she would have a lot of stories about the IEP process, in particular, and how challenging it is as a parent with a disability to navigate that with the timelines, the lack of different formats for information, as you spoke to, Tiffany, just kind of a one-size-fits-all approach for how meetings, communications, notices, and communication goes back and forth. And then also the challenge of navigating a relationship where you are advocating for your child, but the people who you are potentially in, I'll say, conflict with are also the people who your child spends all day with every day. And I am also a parent of a kid who has a disability, and as someone for whom it's my day job to navigate the special education process, I too see how I work really hard to save the conflicts and the confrontation for when it really matters, because it is a tricky balance, and that's really unfortunate that so many parents feel like they have to balance fighting for what their kids need and also tending to how that's received by the people who spend all day with their kids, many of whom really do care deeply about their kids in a lot of situations, but that doesn't always pan out in the way that those kids' needs need to be met. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of this parent, and I guess a little bit on behalf of myself too, and thanks to everyone else who's sharing today.
Thank you so much, Maren. Next on today's agenda, we have, oh gosh, I lost my place. That's typical of me. Next, we have Josette Wynn. Josette, are you ready to speak?
Yes, hi, I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Josette Wynn. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am a Master of Social Work clinical intern at the Autism Society of Minnesota. And today I'd just like to briefly address the long wait lists for autism-related early childhood developmental testing, as well as the educational and medical siloing and unnecessary duplication of testing to receive services. The prevalence of young students with ASD has increased, and I believe it's important for schools to be equipped with trained practitioners and staff to serve these students and their families. Many children receive an educational diagnosis and early intervention services related to education through the school systems. However, the educational diagnosis is limited in its scope of effectiveness in that it does not offer the child or family any comorbid medical or financial supports. These children and families must repeat these same extensive diagnostic processes and tests through the medical silo to receive a medical diagnosis to receive disability and government benefits. However, the wait list for those medical assessments can be upwards of 2 years, providing a window of missed opportunity for the child and family for early intervention and life-altering supports. So this delay greatly affects the long-term outcomes and costs of care for children and individuals with ASD. Therefore, I think it's imperative that our state allow family pediatricians to sign off on standardized autism tests performed at the schools rather than requiring a complete medical reassessment. Licensed psychologists should also be considered legally able to provide this diagnosis with proper standardized testing. They, along with teams of other licensed school professionals, such as the teachers, social workers, speech and language therapists, and occupational therapists, can all coordinate to assist in getting a diagnosis that would be effective as both an educational and a medical diagnosis, and can make a big difference in these kids receiving early diagnosis. So I propose that in order to maximize the access to testing and services, that the existing school psychologists should be educated in diagnosing and supportive care of ASD and the comorbid conditions. And one way to do that would be to make changes to our state statutes, to their Medical Practice Act through their Board of Behavioral Health and Board of Medicine. I propose that new and renewed licenses for school psychologists should require a completed 12-week educational rotation on developmental disabilities, including autism spectrum disorder. Minnesota medical schools should offer this 12-week rotation to be accredited so that any other graduates seeking licensure in the state of Minnesota would have that capability to do the testing and diagnosis. And that is all that I had to say today. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Josette, for sharing your story. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. So we had another participant signed up to speak on education. Laura, if you're in the meeting, would you please unmute? And if not, we can move on.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay, so please forgive me. I don't have nothing written up and stuff. I want to thank Marin H for informing me on Monday. So I'm just kind of speak from the heart and stuff and everything, what my experience has been with the special education system. I am a Black woman. I'm actually sitting in my son's room. I just got home. I'm multitasking and stuff. I'm dropping him off at work and stuff. But I felt like this was important for me to speak. So I appreciate you guys allowing me to speak, and that includes the parents, organizations, you know, reps, whoever is there, since I'm not on a Zoom call, I'm over the phone. But like I said, I am a Black mom, and I had 3 kids that had IEPs. It started off with my sons who are now 20 and 21. So I got them into special education at age 2 and 3 because my background was working with students with special needs. So I saw the signs right away and stuff and everything. So I would say from the beginning with my 2 boys, it started off good, where I had good support from the school district and stuff and everything. And then once my 2 boys got more up in elementary, that's when I noticed that, hey, there's something's not right. You know, what can I do? So I felt like when I voiced my concerns, I wasn't being heard. And then moving forward, I had a daughter who at the time qualified for 504 plan, which she suffered anxiety, but I saw that she struggled academic as well. So she had a 504 plan up until 6th grade. She didn't get an IEP until 7th grade. So what I would say is that I think that the system is broken. We need to fix it. We need to be able to have better resources for the parents, because we as the parents, we are the ones that's advocating for our children. We are the ones that know our children best. Myself personally, I have to applaud all the teachers, paras, even administrators for the support that I've gotten over the years. But I feel like there has been a negative approach of some of the staff that I've had to work with. I think because I advocate so hard, I want to work with anybody that's working with my child. And I have kids right now, they're in a transition program. So I've done K all the way up through transition. So there's been a good experience in each level, from elementary to, junior high to high school, and also in transition. But there's been more negative things that's happened as far as the positive. How it's impacted my life and my kids' life, it's been a lot. I would say, I'm not going to say that I felt suicidal, but you have these thoughts in your mind as if, what can I do? I'm seeing my child is not getting their needs met, and I don't know what to do because I'm having this fight with the school districts to get help. I'm hoping one day, since my kids are now approaching being done with, education, far as in the school system, that we have some change. I listened to some of the parents that were talking, because I came in a little bit late and stuff, but I applaud all of those parents speaking on what it's been like for them and stuff. And each of them touched me in a different way, and I had the same experiences as they were having and stuff. I have my daughter has anxiety among executive function, among other things. I have a son that has autism, and then I have another son that has ADHD and other disabilities. I also want to talk about what I had to fight hard for my son for, and what he had to fight hard for. I think when you are a parent of color, especially a Black parent, even a student, is that you have a harder struggle when it comes to getting an education. I had to fight hard for my son to be in the PSEO program, and he fought hard. He took initiation and did things, went to Normandale, took the test and stuff, but he got punished for it because he wanted to show that, hey, I have this disability, but I still want to go to college and stuff. So the only thing I can say closing out is we need changes. We need our senators, our reps. We need MDE to offer more support than what's being offered now, because I've reached out to every organization that you can think of to get support, to see what can I do to work with the schools, because my goal is to work together, not against each other and stuff. But there's limited resources. And I also think the process is not beneficial for the student or the parent because of the way it's set up right now and stuff and everything. So I really hope that down the line that we have a different change for that, because it's been a struggle for me, and I've been doing this for so many different years, and I haven't seen much change and stuff and everything, but I want change. But I think it starts with, what can we do as lawmakers? What can we do as MDE? What can we do as parents? What can we do as students to all come together and find a common ground where it benefits everybody? I get it's difficult for everybody, but it's all about the children. and I've said this at many meetings, it's not about me. Just because I'm advocating, it doesn't mean that I'm against you guys and stuff. So I feel like we really, really need to work on the communication. Diversity, we need to work on that, because like I said, I am a parent of color, and I've seen myself being disrespected just because I advocate. I've asked for documents, and I know some parents have mentioned that, and they don't have the documents. I've also had to struggle with emails, and I said, I'm sorry, emails is not the best way for me. I need a different form of communication because I don't have all day to be checking emails and stuff. So I just feel like I hope down the line we will figure out a better plan to help our kids in the school system, because every student that has a special needs is not the same. And I think the way it's set up now, that it applies to all students the same way, but that shouldn't be the case and stuff. And I just hope that someday, even today, that somebody is hearing all of us speak and say, we need change. That's all we're saying. We need change. We want better system support for our children moving forward, because when they're done with high school and then entering transition, after that they're done. So they need to be able to be much independent as possible and stuff. But I feel like the school system holds our kids back. And then we as parents have to struggle to figure out what can we do to help fix the problem that's been brought on through education and stuff. So I want to thank everybody allowing me to say that. And I hope that we can all work together, we get change and have a better system set up for parents. Because I think that's one of the things I never see, that where there's not an outlet for parents, there's not a group set up, there's not nothing that MTE can offer more, so that way they can get an insight of what's going on with parents who have kids with special needs and stuff and everything. So I think if anything, having something like that, and also changes some of the way that if you need to file a complaint, the way it's set up, I just feel like it's not beneficial for any of us, So I think that's all I want to say, and I just want to thank everybody for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much, Laura. Your story is very powerful, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. I also want to take a brief break to acknowledge and apologize that our meeting was Zoom hacked, and there are some very harmful things in the chat. If you saw it, I'm so sorry that happened. And I want to thank all of the organizers also for stepping in to help, to stop it from happening. And I assure you, none of our organizers actually said the things that were hacked into the chat. So I apologize, and thank you to the fellow organizers for stepping in to help get this handled right away. I have my own story to share related to accessing education for my children. As I said earlier, I'm a disabled parent of disabled children. I'm Native, and my children are Black and Native. Trying to advocate for a free, appropriate public education for my children has been painful. There's no common definition of appropriate. Whereas I view appropriate as meeting the child's needs, the schools often view appropriate to mean make the child behave appropriately even if they can't. I advocated for culturally appropriate and safe services for my children. The hill I died on was demanding that they get my daughter's consent before touching her. As a disabled Native girl, she is at incredibly high risk for sexual violence. She needs to be taught that she owns her own body, and she has a right to decide who touches her, how they touch her, and when they touch her. She is touch reactive. This means that it is distressing for her if someone touches her unexpectedly and without her consent, and she may defend herself from unwanted touch. In 2018, I asked the local school district for communication adaptations for myself for an IEP meeting, specifically reasonable accommodations for my disability related to communication. I asked to use a form of AAC, which stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. AAC is the gold standard for communication support. This is true for both non-speaking people and intermittent speakers. I am someone who has a difficult time speaking at times, particularly when I am experiencing a conflict. Accessible communication is a human right. It is also described in detail by the ADA website as a reasonable accommodation. The district responded, "You requested that the district accommodate your disability by means of a text-based virtual meeting. Although unclear, it appears that you are asking the district to provide real-time transcription of the meeting or to conduct the meeting through means of something analogous to a chat room. The district does not have sufficient basis to determine that you have a disability that would require such an accommodation in order for you to meaningfully participate in an IEP team meeting. You have stated that you have been diagnosed with autism, but you have not provided any medical verification of that diagnosis. In addition, real-time transcription would not be an accommodation that would be beneficial to most individuals with autism, and you have not provided any verification from a medical professional that you require such an accommodation. The district will consider any medical information that you provide in determining on a case-by-case basis whether you have an individual need for further accommodations. The school district demanded access to my medical records, a violation of the broad scope clause of the ADA. The school had already acknowledged my disability, and they suggested that I use my own disability services as a support. They only invalidated my disability when it came time to refuse me reasonable accommodations. I ended up having to pull my children from the public school for their safety. We were pushed out. 2 of my children had been physically assaulted by school staff, and the increasing intensity of retaliation from the school caused me to be frightened for their safety. I tried to file a due process complaint. Because I filed my due process complaint after my children were removed from school, it was rejected by the administrative law judge. There's some kind of ruling that is exclusive to Minnesota that says that parents may not file due process complaints after their child has been removed from the school. If I had allowed my children to remain in an unsafe environment, I would have had a year to file the complaint. I had requested a reasonable accommodation from the administrative law judge for extended time in an effort to have our case be heard. If we can understand that disabled children may need extended time to complete tasks, it is reasonable to understand that disabled adults may also need extended time to complete tasks. Disability doesn't just go away because a person is an adult. One form of retaliation that the school engaged in was sending a fraudulent draft IEP to the Social Security Administration, resulting in the denial of my child's second-level Social Security appeal. Despite the school proposing a federal setting 4 for my child, which means a child receives special education services at a separate school facility for more than 50% of the day, the document that the school sent to the Social Security Administration said my child had absolutely no difficulties at school. I asked for data to back up their request or their suggestion that my child should be in a setting 4, and they never provided it. She lost over 3 years of benefits, and the Social Security Administration denied the application based on this single fraudulent document. Any future application for disability benefits will include this fraudulent document, all because I requested accessibility for myself. Finally, I want to say the only person on the IEP team that does not have a conflict of interest is the parent. School administration also has an interest in finances and staffing. Teachers also have an interest in classroom management. A parent's only interest is their child. So I want to say thank you for listening to my story. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge an invited listener to come who joined us, Representative Davnie, the chair of the House Education Committee. I want to thank you so much for coming today, and everybody else who's attended and shared their stories. This is different. It's not what we're used to, and it is great, and we need to hear directly from the people who are impacted. So thank you. And I'm going to hand off the meeting to Tom if he is prepared to speak. Otherwise, Tom, if you're not available to speak, maybe Maren Christensen, are you willing to close out our meeting?
Jules, we've changed some settings due to the
Oh.
intrusion. You might have to unmute Tom for
Oh,
us.
okay. I'll ask unmute. Apologies. Hi, Tom. Thank you.
Hi. Sound is working.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Tom Cox. My pronouns are he, him. My video shows a middle-aged white guy with a mustache, blue shirt, wearing headphones. I'm in my home den with walls cluttered with whiteboard and papers. I am gay, autistic, and proud. I am disabled. I, too, have a story like those we have heard today. I serve as vice chair of the Minnesota Autism Council and as a board member of Autism Society of Minnesota. Disabled people face unreasonable barriers to accessing education, services, and supports, as were intended by legislation and administration. The state of Minnesota has good leadership and good administration. Unfortunately, services are too often not delivered the way they are intended. In sharing our stories, disabled people lighten our burden by allowing the burden to be shared. Today's stories help show the path we need to follow to get to where we want to get to. Thanks to all of you for attending the virtual town hall. We are so grateful to our speakers for sharing their stories. We appreciate the work of our invited listeners. Now that we've heard these stories, you may be wondering what the next step is. Our co-hosts today, I'm going to read a list here. Our co-hosts today include Ed Allies, Minnesota Consortium for Citizens with Disabilities, Multicultural Autism Action Network, Minnesota Council on Disability, the ARC of Minnesota, Autism Society of Minnesota, Proof Alliance, SIWA, Asian Indian Family Wellness, the Down Syndrome Association of Minnesota, SHA, or Supporting All Abilities, Welcoming All Voices, Solutions, Not Suspensions, PACER Center, and the Minnesota Autism Council. The next steps will be, these organizations will be meeting to talk about the issues that were brought up today, engage with our invited listeners, and continue the conversation with stakeholders. Today's stories can be turned into policy recommendations. If you would like to keep up to date with these conversations, we invite you to take the survey, which we'll link in chat. This survey provides an opportunity to share stories and also to give your contact information for updates. A recording of today's town hall will be available. We'll send a link to everyone registered, or you can find it on Autism Council's Facebook page. Every change starts with a story, and we thank you for joining us today to lift up the stories from the disability community about the challenges in ensuring that services for people with disabilities are accessible to people with disabilities. Thank you.